How much MOTS-c can I take? At Is MOTS Health, we have really prized ourselves on the ability to help people transform their health by using peptides. And so in this video, I'm going to talk to you about dosing a really powerful peptide called MOTS-c appropriately. I'll also show you some of the things you don't want to do when it comes to MOTS-c and some of the risks that are associated with it. But by the end of this video, you'll have the confidence to understand how to dose MOTS-c and what benefits you can expect to see from this. So let's jump into the science. We had a 61-year-old client that came to see us who had fatigue and insulin resistance. Her hemoglobin A1C was 5.9 and she craved sugar all the time and she was hangry, so we'd always have little snacks in the office so she didn't get grumpy. And she found that she wasn't losing weight even though she was on semaglutide. And she was frustrated because her goal, as we ran her labs, we realized that she had not only this metabolic dysfunction, which she has type 2 diabetes in her family history and cardiovascular disease, but we also realized that she wanted to change her body composition and have more energy. And so as we dove in, we talked to her about using MOTS-c. Now, what is MOTS-c? Well, MOTS-c is in the family of peptides called mitochondrial-derived peptides. And you're like, what is mitochondria, Regan? Well, mitochondria is more than the powerhouse of the cell. I know that's how we were taught in high school, which is slightly accurate, but the mitochondria are so much more than that. The mitochondria are these evolved bacteria that migrate into the cells so that they can inform the biome in your gut. The mitochondria are not only are they energy generators, but they inform your immune system. So if your body's under attack, like you have a lot of stress or you've been exposed to chemicals or you've got infections that come into your body, even from physical trauma, then the mitochondria migrate outside of the cell wall and they'll produce ATP or energy outside of the cell to inform the immune system. So these mitochondria, they also vibrate at a certain rate. So just like when you walk out into the sun, first thing in the morning as the sun's rising, you know how good that feels, just being outside? That sunlight activates the mitochondria. And so literally, I know this is going to sound like woo-woo to some of you, but actually there's science behind this that our bodies are a vibrating machine. We are an energy generating plant. You can stick your finger in an electrical socket and I'll prove it to you because you'll get, well, don't do it please, but you notice that you can get shocked. It's because our bodies have these positive and negative charges that go throughout it. And by activating the mitochondria, you vibrate at a higher level. How many times have you been around a person and he said, man, I just feel really good around them. They're just so vibrant. It doesn't matter what age they are. I was just spending time with a friend of mine and he's 74. And I told him, I'm like, Jan, you are not, you seem like you're a 50-year-old or a 45-year-old. Like he just has so much vibrancy. And he says, you know what? I love that because everyone tells me that. And if I dyed my hair and everything else, I probably would look 45 because his skin's vibrant. He's got the most positive attitude. But when you look at his labs, he's got this really nice mitochondrial profile. So why is this important? Well, these mitochondrial peptides are what clean up the activation of that vibration in your body. And this is one of the reasons I love these category of peptides. So MOTS-c is one of them. There's another peptide called SS31, and that peptide right now is in phase 3 clinical trials for Alzheimer's and type 2 diabetes, which you can see the correlation there because a lot of Alzheimer's is considered type 3 diabetes. But what SS31 does is it cleans up that mitochondrial membrane so that you don't have the mitochondria going into cell danger response outside of the cell wall. There's another mitochondrial peptide called humanin, and humanin is there to create more what's called mitophagy. So it clears out the underperforming mitochondria in your cells, just like you have autophagy with cellular debris. There's another one called SLOOP332. This one is orally available, and what they found in the mice model, that the mice, by doing nothing else, only using the SLOOP332, they're able to run 70% farther. This was out of the University of Florida. I believe it was 24 when that study was released. And then 5-amino-1-MQ. While not technically a peptide, it's a small molecule, but it works on that same AMPK pathway and activates the mitochondrial expression. So MOTS-c when you look at this peptide and you're saying, well, how much should I use? It really depends on the health of your mitochondria. Now, some people will use a microdose of it, and that would be like 5 milligrams once a week. And you could even break that up into small little dosing throughout the course of a week. And I know in my case, I actually like doing the MOTS-c a little more frequently. I found that it just gave me a little more of a jump start. Whereas some of our clients, they travel a lot and they don't like to inject themselves every day. And so you can also use this lower dose, the 5 milligrams. You can just use that once a week. And it goes great, especially if you're using a GLP-1 like tirzepatide or semaglutide. You can combine that weekly injection so that you're not having multiple days where you're doing these injections on yourself. So the patient who came in, what we did is we said, we want you to go to 10 milligrams per week, because when we looked at her profile, what we found is that she had very low mitochondrial performance. Her LDH was very high, so that means her glucose metabolism was limited. So the lactose dehydrogenase, one of the things that it can show you in your blood labs is just how well your body's taking in glucose and metabolizing it. When we ran her organic oats test or her organic acids test, what we found is that she wasn't breaking down pyruvate very well. And she also had a poor ability to create ketones in her body. And so she had just really low energy. And just by using these mitochondrial peptides, we got her on MOTS-c first, but we had to dose it a little higher at that 10 milligrams. And she found that if she broke that up into 3 injections throughout the course of the week, that's what gave her the most sustainable energy, where she had the motivation to work out. She also found that her weight started to come down and her strength increased. The other time where you can use an even higher dose is where you can go up to 15 milligrams a week. And there are some people who will use as high as 30 milligrams. I don't recommend it, because the danger of MOTS-c is your body can look at this protein as a foreign structure if you use it too much. And what we've seen is what's called an immunogenic response, where people have used a higher dose because maybe they've read something on the internet, and then their immune system rejects it, and they have almost like an anaphylaxis outbreak from it. You can have a rash on your skin, your heart rate can get really elevated, you can notice swelling, and that's when you want to make sure you've got some Benadryl, use something like Zyrtec, so that you're using these antihistamines to calm that down if that ever happens to you. But the way to use it safely is to don't exceed 15 milligrams in a week. Make sure that when you are injecting it, that you're supporting what's called the electron transport chain. And that's where if you use an agent called methylene blue is an electron donor. So it helps activate that energy that gets into the mitochondria so that you get a better expression when you're using MOTS-c. Methylene blue is activated when you get out in the sunlight. So anytime you're using any mitochondrial peptides or methylene blue, make sure you get out in the sun every day. Get it as the sun's rising and as the sun's setting. Leave your sunglasses, leave your sunscreen, everything behind, and just go out in the sun for 10 or 20 minutes. It's so good for your health. And then that will activate the mitochondria, so you'll have a much better expression from it. After just 6 short weeks of working with this client, not only did her strength increase, her weight started to come down, but her hemoglobin A1C went from 5.9 to 5.4. She reported a 50% increase in morning energy, better mental clarity. Her weight went down 9.2 pounds, with 3.1 pounds of confirmed lean muscle mass retention. Her exercise tolerance, she said she was able to increase her strength training volume without the fatigue post-workout. And she said, I'm not just losing weight, my body feels efficient again. This was after 6 months of working with us. And another study on MOTS-c, this one was done in 2019. This was a preclinical study, and it investigated the effects of MOTS-c and metabolic changes on postmenopausal women. Because as our hormones change and as you go into menopause, you'll notice that metabolically things become more challenging. And I know you're not a woman, Regan, you don't know what it's like, but I have talked to a lot of women who are postmenopausal, and the number one complaint that I hear is, my body is stubborn. It won't lose weight the way that it used to, no matter what I eat. I look at food and I gain weight. And so what they looked at is looking at MOTS-c treatment, and they found that it prevented the development of obesity and insulin resistance. It activated brown fat. it reduced adiposity, it lowered inflammation, and what they found is that there's a big suggestion in mitigating this metabolic dysfunction in postmenopausal women by using MOTS-c. So it's something that you absolutely want to consider, because think about what MOTS-c does. When you're activating what's called brown fat is the metabolically active fat. The white fat is metabolically inactive. There's a peptide called adipotide that we'll use with MOTS-c when there's a lot of visceral fat in our patients. And what adipotide does is it turns off the two enzymes that allow for blood supply to feed that visceral fat. And when you turn off the energy source and the food supply to those white fat, then you'll notice that your body actually starts to get more metabolically active, and then your fat becomes a source of energy instead of a source of pro-inflammation and a source of more weight gain. So MOTS-c, if you are postmenopausal, and if you're somebody who's looking to go deep and really fix things metabolically for good, whether you're postmenopausal, whether you're andropausal, that's the male version of when our hormones fluctuate, when your testosterone drops, MOTS-c is a phenomenal treatment that we've seen, and I believe this one will be as big of a blockbuster as like Ozempic has been, or Mounjaro, because of the way that it mimics exercise. Is probably the closest thing that we have as far as exercise in a bottle goes. So for those of you who are excited about MOTS-c and you want to learn more, I've got a video all about MOTS-c. Just click on the link below. I'm Regan Archibald, founder of the Peptide Blueprint, and I will see you in the next video.